Hey, Marlins fans! Welcome to a new edition of Big Fish Small Pod for Monday, June 10th, here on the Fish on First podcast channel, presented by MPT College Consulting. I'm Ely Sussman. The usual routine on Mondays here on the Small Pod is to do a Marlins prospect spotlight, picking out a different player of interest from each full season level of the Marlins farm system. I had to switch up the formatting a little bit this time because there are two guys who have risen head and shoulders above the rest over this past week. Let's get into both Joe Mack and Griffin Conine. The numbers on both of them absolutely staggering over this past series that they had. Both of them played all 6 games. Both of them homered 4 times apiece. Conine for AAA Jacksonville, Joe Mack for AA Pensacola. Conine's slash line, a 500 batting average, 600 on base, an 1150 slugging percentage. That's an OPS of 1750. In Mack, it's almost a carbon copy of that. He slashed 455, 539, 1091 for an OPS of 1629. Just incredible. We'll start with Mack, who at least is ranked on our Fish on First top 30 list. He was number 25 when we updated those rankings last month. And we had to bring this up last night on the State of the Fish call-in show. For people that aren't familiar, on Sunday nights, we have one of those shows that typically branches into prospects as well as the big league team. And I think just informally, we've reached a point where he has emerged as the top catching prospect in this organization. Started the year in high A Beloit, coming off a 2023 season in Beloit where he was terrible offensively. It was no surprise that he had to repeat the level, still just 21 years old. Within just a couple of weeks of the start of the season, he got off to an outstanding start, and the Marlins moved him up to Pensacola, where he is the youngest player on that Blue Wahoos team. And it was an interesting roster fit because even now they have 3 catchers on that roster, including guy that we were pretty excited about not too long ago in Paul McIntosh, but Mack has usurped P-Mac as their primary catcher over there, kind of pushing even Bennett Hostetler to a mostly infield DH position. They've made room for Mack because that's what you do when you have somebody that's finally living up to his initial prospect pedigree. Mack has been drafted and developed by the Marlins organization since 2021. They paid him a bonus of $2.5 million just a few years ago. And when he's finally showing the combination of catching fundamentals and really exciting run production, that's when you really start reconsidering where he falls in this whole organizational picture. He got off to a hot start upon that promotion to Pensacola way back in late April, but then went through a lull for a little while as well. It's only been the last few weeks where once again he has caught fire again. All things considered, for the season overall, combines his little taste of Beloit and longer now to this point in Pensacola. He's hit 10 home runs. He's slashing 273, 354, 502. Mack leads the entire Marlins organization in total bases this season with 105, while splitting time pretty evenly between catcher and DH in order to keep himself in the lineup as often as possible. He's got power to all fields. He homered this past week. Those 4 home runs came in 4 consecutive days, the last of which went out to dead center field, well over 400 feet away. That's just immensely exciting for a guy who only homered 6 total times in 2023. I'll reiterate that he is DHing almost half of his games, and I think that is helping, no doubt, his offensive production. Whereas if you have somebody that is catching almost exclusively, the wear and tear of that position generally bleeds into what you can produce at the plate. With that being said, I mean, you look around baseball, not to get hyperbolic, but some of the best catchers out there, Adley Rutschman, William Contreras, Will Smith, those are guys that DH quite a bit on their off days in order to keep them in the lineup for as many games as possible. So it's not necessarily having to point out that his time behind the plate is limited. It's, if you have a player that is one of your better offensive players in the organization, then that's a great problem to have in order to occupy the DH spot a lot of the time. But in terms of catching, even this past week, a couple runners caught stealing on target and strong throws from behind the plate. I don't think it's been much of a question that he is competent defensively behind the plate in a way that should last even as he moves up the organization as well. And it should go without saying that the Marlins are in desperate need of some sort of long-term potential answer behind the plate, because right now in 2024 and among the guys that are closest to the big leagues, there's no comforting answer there. And Mack has pretty obviously now emerged as the guy that you're most excited about. Not an option for the big leagues this year, as aggressive as they were promoting him to Double-A. And I wouldn't even rule out that he makes it up to Jacksonville by the end of the year. He's not going to be a major league option until next year at the very earliest. But somebody that has, more so than I think anybody else in the organization, he has really raised his prospect stock through these first couple months of the season. Now, getting over to Conine, a name that you're all familiar with. He is indeed the son of Jeff Conine, and he's been in this organization longer than Mack has, since a 2020 trade with the Blue Jays. And with Conine, it's just been the same story almost every single step of the way with the organization, where his power is even mightier than Max's, with all due respect. And that has been backed up not just by seeing the ball go out to all fields, but the kind of exit velocities he's producing this season pretty consistently. 108, 109, 110, 111 miles per hour off the bat. Those are the kind of numbers that are really impressive even for a big league regular. And that has always been there. It's just the strikeouts. The strikeout rate has just been totally untenable. For somebody to strike out in more than 1/3 of their plate appearances in the minors, history shows that those type of players just cannot survive in the big leagues, because they're having enough trouble with the stuff that those lesser talents are throwing. They just might not have the coordination they need in order to survive at the big league level, where especially in a situation where you're being advanced scouted so much more precisely and teams know your strengths and weaknesses. But Conine, 26 years young, about to turn 27 years old, he has seemingly turned a corner. He has cut down on that strikeout rate in a way that he hasn't done since short season ball, back when he was a Blue Jays prospect, about a year removed from the draft. Now he's a guy that already had a taste of AAA last year, and I think that helps. He's somebody that has pretty consistently struggled in his early tastes of new levels of competition before getting more acclimated with more time. But he's doing it in a way where it's not just about that power production. He's now up to 13 home runs this year, which leads all Marlins minor leaguers, OPSing 921 on the season, is the fact that now his strikeout rate is 28%. Still a lot worse than average, but it's palatable. At the big league level, some of the very best players in the sport strike out 28% of the time. And it's a significant improvement from where he was at AAA last year. I think he was at 38% when he got his first chance of action in 2023 at Jacksonville. Also encouraging for this left-handed hitter is the platoon splits. They've calmed down a little bit. It's still pretty drastic now that I look at it, but there have been years where he was essentially being platooned in Jacksonville in 2023 when he first came up, and now he's in the lineup almost every day. OPS of 719 against fellow lefties, and it's survivable. I think realistically, you need to. The ceiling is not there with what Mack is, because he is a corner outfielder, and I do think those platoon splits still do tell a pretty strong story that he gets much better looks against pitchers when he has that advantage. So he's not going to be an everyday player in the big leagues, but the possibility of him actually getting to the big leagues has really changed, especially over this past month or so. He has been the hottest hitter. If you go back for an entire month-long stretch, he's been phenomenal with the combination of power and simply putting the ball in play on a more regular basis right here. A call-up is not imminent right here. The corner outfield spots with the Marlins are pretty crowded, even including the subtraction of Avi Garcia. This is a situation where you look at maybe after the trade deadline, if the Marlins are willing to consider offers for Brian De La Cruz and or Jesus Sanchez, maybe Conine slides into there. opening up the DH spot a little bit with the trade of Josh Bell would also help. Or you just never know when injuries, unfortunately, are going to come along the way, and Conine would be able to capitalize on that. This was such a crucial year for Conine. It was his last year under club control before potentially becoming a minor league free agent. And once you repeat a level more than once, that's when the stats really just become meaningless, to be blunt about it. So he needed to perform really well this year, and he has. He's put himself on the radar for a late season call up at the very least. So that's going to be, assuming he does get up, even for just one game or one at bat with the Marlins, with Conine on the back of his jersey, that would be one of the big bright spots of this entire season. So I can imagine that so many people out there are rooting for him to get that look at the big league level, even if it is under non-competitive circumstances for the Marlins. This has been Big Fish Small Pod for Monday, June 10th, presented by MPT College Consulting. Check them out, mptcollegeconsulting.com. I've been Ely Sussman, and thanks for following along with our coverage. I'll have a more traditional Marlins prospect spotlight next week, but a whole lot of programming between now and then on fishonfirst.com. Thanks for your support, and go Fish.